Have you ever looked back at a moment and wondered how you let them get that close? How you allowed someone so unworthy to have so much power over your peace? Not because you were weak, but because you believed in their words, their smiles, their promises. And in return, they handed you silence, betrayal, and pain. The kind of pain that doesn't just sting for a second, it lingers. It rewires how you see people. It forces you to question your worth. And worst of all, it makes you doubt yourself. You gave them the best parts of you, your loyalty, your trust, your patience, and when things broke, you blamed yourself. You thought maybe you were too much, too emotional, too forgiving. But here's the truth you were never told. You weren't too much. You were unguarded. You were unguarded. You were taught to lead with your heart while the world was sharpening its knives. You were told that being kind was enough, that being good would protect you. But you've learned, sometimes the hardest way possible, that goodness alone is an armor. It's bait. Machiavelli saw this clearly. That the world isn't run on kindness, it's run on leverage, on power, on perception. And if you don't learn how to see clearly, how to stop romanticizing people and start studying them, you'll keep bleeding in places no one can see. But that ends here. This pain, this betrayal, this deep ache in your soul, it's not the end of you. It's the awakening. It's the spark that forces you to stop living asleep and start seeing the truth for what it is. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. The people who hurt you once only had the chance because you gave them the access. You handed them the weapon, hoping they'd protect you with it. But now you're learning that trust must be earned, not given freely. That silence is often louder than an apology. And that survival, true survival, comes from no longer needing anyone to treat you right in order for you to stand tall. From this moment forward, you are no longer available to be wounded by the same patterns. You are stepping into a version of yourself that sees, that decides, and that enforces. You're no longer playing the role of the loyal victim. You're writing a new role, the protector of your own peace, the guardian of your energy, the master of who gets close and who never gets a second chance. Stay with this message. Because by the end, you'll not only understand why they hurt you, you'll finally know how to make sure it never happens again. Not through fear, not through vengeance, but through power. The kind of power that comes when you stop waiting for someone to protect you and become the person who no longer needs protection. This is your transformation, and it starts now. The reason they were able to break you was because you assumed they were built like you, that they valued honesty the way you did, that they meant their words when they said they cared. But most people don't operate on truth. They operate on benefit, on what they can get, how long they can keep getting it, and what mask they need to wear to stay close. And the more you believed in their potential, the easier it was for them to hide their intentions. That's not a reflection of your failure. It's proof of how deeply you loved without calculation. But love without clarity becomes the very thing that destroys you. This world doesn't run on sincerity. It runs on leverage, on people calculating their next move while you're still giving them your heart. And Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. Intentions are worthless without outcomes. What they meant doesn't matter. What they did is what counts. You can't heal by making excuses for the ones who caused the wound. You can't move forward while still romanticizing what was never real. They didn't hurt you because you were flawed. They hurt you because they could, and that realization is your liberation. When you stop needing to believe the best in people, you stop handing them the ability to destroy you. You start seeing patterns instead of promises. You start listening to actions instead of words. And you stop being surprised when someone shows you who they are, because this time, you believe them. That shift is power, because now your kindness is no longer blind. It's intentional, controlled, given only to those who show they're worthy of it. Everyone else, they get distance, silence, closure without conversation. You were never meant to be available to everyone. You were never meant to absorb every apology, every excuse, every half-truth wrapped in charm. You were meant to evolve, to sharpen, to become dangerous in your discernment, and that doesn't make you cruel. It makes you wise. It means you've seen the cost of naivety and decided never to pay it again. It means your heart now serves you, not those who only show up to drain it. Stop looking for innocence in others. Start looking for consistency. Stop hoping they'll change. Start preparing to walk away the first time they prove they won't. That is the moment you shift from being controlled by your emotions to commanding your reality. Because nothing is more powerful than a heart that has learned to love with boundaries, a mind that has trained itself to question patterns, not promises, and a soul that no longer pleads for peace but creates it by choosing who gets close. This is your new standard. No more free access. No more believing the best just because you want it to be true. You are no longer here to be wounded. You are here to be wise. And wisdom never begs to be treated right. It simply refuses to be treated wrong. The moment you realize your empathy has become a liability, everything changes. What once made you feel noble now makes you feel exposed. You gave understanding even when you were confused. You gave forgiveness even when the damage was still fresh. You stayed silent to keep the peace while your spirit screamed for justice. And all the while, they took more. Because people don't stop when they see you breaking. They stop when they feel they can't take anything else. That's the line you must now draw, not in sand, but in stone. You're not here to become heartless. You're here to become selective. Not everyone deserves the softness you've been giving for free. Because when you hand your empathy to those who haven't earned it, they see it as weakness. They don't appreciate it. They exploit it. They learn your patterns. They know your limits. And when the time is right, they use those very things against you. That's not your fault, but it becomes your responsibility to stop allowing it. This is where you take it back. Your energy, your clarity, your control. Compassion should never mean self-abandonment. Kindness is not measured by how much pain you absorb without protest. There is no virtue in shrinking yourself to avoid confrontation. Every time you silence your own needs to accommodate someone else's chaos, you train yourself to disappear. And every time you let something slide, you're not keeping the peace. You're just giving them permission to do it again. That cycle ends with you, right now. You owe no one your silence when you are hurting. You owe no one your loyalty when they've proven disloyal. You don't win by being the one who always understands. You win by being the one who understands yourself, your limits, your value, your worth. That is strength. That is control. That is what will protect you when the world tries to pull you back into old versions of yourself. Let them say you're colder now. Let them whisper that you've changed. They're right. Because growth always looks like distance to those who benefited from your closeness. You are not hard. You are healed. You are not bitter. You are aware, and the boundaries they hate are the ones you had to build to finally protect yourself from being broken. Respect isn't a request, it's a requirement. And when you stop enforcing it, people start testing how far they can push. They start seeing how much of yourself you'll sacrifice just to keep them. Ugh. And every time you bend, every time you explain, every time you give them one more chance, you train them to believe you'll always choose peace over power. But peace that costs your dignity is just quiet self-destruction. That is not healing. That is surrender. They don't change because you forgive. They don't improve because you endure. They change only when you make the consequences too uncomfortable to ignore. People don't learn from comfort. They learn from boundaries, from distance, from silence, from being cut off the moment their actions stop matching their words. That's how you reclaim your power, not through arguments, not through begging, but through actions so loud you never need to speak twice. When someone disrespects you, they've already made their choice. The question is, will you make yours? Will you keep pleading, or will you rise? Will you keep explaining why you deserve more, or will you walk like someone who already knows? Because when you finally understand your worth, you stop trying to prove it. You stop asking them to see you. You let them watch as you disappear into a life where you're no longer accessible to their chaos. You don't get stronger by tolerating more. You get stronger by tolerating less. Less nonsense, less excuses, less emotional labor for people who show no effort. And when you start setting those boundaries, they will resist. They will call you harsh. They will say you've changed, and you have, because the old version of you was available to pain. This one is not. This version of you doesn't negotiate with disrespect. It doesn't make space for confusion. It doesn't stay in rooms where you have to shrink just to be accepted. This version of you walks away with grace and never looks back, because silence, distance, and self-respect are louder than any words you could ever say. You owe it to yourself to become unavailable to anything that weakens your spirit. You owe it to yourself to stop asking and start deciding. You're not here to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You're here to become untouchable because when you enforce your worth, the world has no choice but to follow. The most dangerous version of you is the one they can't figure out. Not because you're hiding, but because you've stopped explaining. You've stopped oversharing your emotions, stopped announcing your plans, stopped giving people the blueprint to your soul. And suddenly they can't predict you. They can't play the same games. Because every time they thought they had you understood, you shifted. You became quiet where you used to react. You observed where you used to explain. And that silence speaks louder than anything you've ever said. You don't need to be seen to win. You need to be strategic. The moment they know exactly how to get to you, you've handed them control. That's why unpredictability is power. When no one knows how far you'll go, how much you know, or what you're truly thinking, they hesitate. They tread lightly. They stop treating you like someone they can manipulate. Because confusion is control to the one who remains composed. You are no longer a mirror for their chaos. You are a wall they can't climb. You've been too transparent with the wrong people for too long. You gave your thoughts, your fears, your hopes, and they weaponized them. They used your openness as ammunition. They twisted your vulnerability into leverage. And you kept thinking that honesty would make them loyal. But now you know better. Loyalty isn't built on how much they know about you. It's built on how they act when they know nothing, when they can't read your silence, when they're left wondering where they stand. That is the space where their true nature is revealed. Your silence is no longer a weakness. It's a weapon. It's how you reclaim your energy, how you protect your peace, how you maintain your advantage. People talk to be understood, but power listens, watches, and calculates. While they waste time trying to figure you out, you're already 3 steps ahead. Because strategy lives in restraint, and restraint is the foundation of every powerful mind. You don't need to correct their misunderstandings. Let them believe what they want. You don't need to justify your decisions. Let your outcomes speak for themselves. You don't need to fill the silence. Let it grow heavy. Let it reveal who was truly there for you and who just needed access to your weakness. The ones who cannot stand your stillness are the ones who fed off your reactions. From this moment forward, guard your plans. Guard your growth. Guard your inner world like it's your kingdom, because it is. Let curiosity become their punishment. Let mystery become your protection, and let the peace of being unreadable become your new state of power. You're not here to be figured out. You're here to be respected. And the less they know, the less they can use. In silence, you become stronger. In privacy, you become untouchable. You no longer move to be seen. You move to be unstoppable. You were never meant to play the role of the victim forever. At some point, you have to become the one who doesn't just survive but dominates. The one who no longer explains, reacts, or waits for justice, but becomes it. Because power doesn't beg. It doesn't hope. It doesn't wonder when others will finally do right. Power makes decisions. It draws lines. It ends cycles. When you stop trying to be liked and start becoming respected, everything changes. They stop testing you. They stop doubting you. They start feeling what it's like to lose access to you. Fear lasts longer than love in the minds of those who never truly valued either. When people believe they can lose you without consequence, they never appreciate your presence. But when they know you've become the kind of person who doesn't hesitate to walk away, they shift. Because control doesn't come from shouting, it comes from quiet certainty. The certainty that you no longer chase, no longer plead, no longer hand over your power just to feel accepted. You've spent enough time giving people the benefit of the doubt. Now you benefit from discipline, from sharp instincts, from ruthless self-respect. You're not bitter. You're refined. You're not cruel. You're calculated. And that shift is necessary because no one will protect you the way you can protect yourself. No one will fight harder for your peace than you. And no one should have the power to destroy you simply because they once made you feel seen. This new version of you doesn't react impulsively. It observes patterns. It detects energy. It listens more than it speaks and acts more than it announces. You don't get loud. You get serious. You get precise. You stop fighting battles that aren't worth your presence. And when someone tries to bring back the old version of you, the one they could guilt, manipulate, or confuse, they find nothing to hold on to. Because that version of you no longer exists. You've become the person who no longer asks for fairness. You create it. You don't wait for apologies. You close the door. You don't explain your absence. You disappear without permission. That's not anger, it's evolution. That's not revenge, it's wisdom. You don't lower yourself to match their behavior. You rise so far above it, they can't reach you even if they try. Let them feel your absence. Let them wonder where your softness went. It didn't die, it transformed into strength. Strength they never expected. Strength they can no longer manipulate. Because now you don't need them to be better for you to be free. You freed yourself. You reclaimed your control. Why control? And from here forward, you don't exist to be hurt, tested, or understood. You exist to lead, to rule, to protect what no one else protected. You. This is the moment you become the threat, not the target. The one who commands silence, the one who enforces truth, and the one who will never again be broken by someone too weak to value your strength. Most people are not ruled by logic. They are ruled by their emotions. They react without thinking, speak without listening, move without direction. And in that state of chaos, they become easy to control. Because when a person has no command over themselves, anyone with clarity can lead them. The world is full of noise, opinions, distractions, triggers, and the average mind is addicted to it. But you are not average. You are not here to be pulled into every conflict, every emotional storm, every demand for your attention. You are here to rise above it all with silence, precision, and power. How's emotional discipline isn't about coldness. It's about refusing to drown in the waves other people create. It's the difference between being reactive and being ready. While others are scrambling to defend themselves, prove themselves, or chase validation, you stay rooted. You stay composed. Because your power does not come from how loudly you speak, but from how little you need to. Every time you pause before reacting, you increase your control. Every time you choose strategy over impulse, you multiply your strength. This is how you dominate without saying a word. You become the calmest presence in any room. While they argue, you analyze. While they rush, you calculate. While they try to shake your peace, you remain still. That stillness doesn't mean weakness. It means you've mastered what they still fear, self-control. When your mind is no longer a battlefield, the world outside of you loses its grip. You are no longer driven by fear, by anger, by the need to be understood. You are driven by vision, and vision makes you unstoppable. Clarity is rare because it requires discipline. It requires tuning out the noise and listening to the silence within. That's where your power lives, not in their approval, not in their acceptance, in the stillness where no one else can go. And when you learn to access that space on command, chaos becomes irrelevant. The louder they get, the more powerful your silence becomes. Because silence backed by strength is terrifying. It makes them question everything they thought they knew about you. You don't rise by controlling others. You rise by mastering yourself. That's the ultimate form of freedom. When nothing rattles your peace, when no one dictates your reaction, you've already won. Most people can be manipulated because they need to be seen, need to be heard, need to be understood. But when you no longer need, you become a presence that cannot be moved. Your emotions are not the enemy. Your lack of control over them is. But now you've reclaimed that control. You've stepped into a level of power that cannot be faked. And from this space, you choose your battles, you protect your energy, you decide your future, not with force, but with focus. The storm around you no longer matters when you've become the storm within. They cannot hurt what they cannot reach, and they cannot reach what you've made untouchable. Not by hiding, not by running, but by rising so completely that their games, their words, their absence no longer penetrate your reality. This isn't about building walls to keep people out. It's about building a foundation so strong that no one can shake it, because power isn't loud. Power is being immune to manipulation, immune to guilt, immune to the endless cycle of chasing what was never meant to hold you. You've spent enough time questioning your worth through the lens of other people's approval. You've measured your strength by how much you could tolerate, how much you could endure, how much you could carry. But that was never the mark of strength. The real strength is in refusal. Refusal to bend for those who would never do the same for you. Refusal to stay silent in the face of disrespect. Refusal to keep proving yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This new you doesn't seek validation. It demands alignment. If they don't elevate, they're eliminated. Simple. Clean. Final. You no longer owe explanations. You owe yourself results. Results that come from action, from boundaries, from decisions that put your peace before their approval. Because you don't need everyone to like you. You need to like the life you're building. You need to walk into every room knowing you're not hoping to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. That's the shift. That's the moment everything turns. When your self-respect becomes so high, their opinions start to sound like background noise. Every time you lower your standards for connection, you send a message to the world that your peace is negotiable, that your values can be adjusted, that your strength has limits. But that ends now. You've seen what it costs to give people the benefit of the doubt. You've felt the weight of carrying unreciprocated effort, and you've finally understood that kindness without clarity is just an invitation for pain. Now your kindness has limits. Now your heart has armor. Now your soul is guarded not by fear, but by wisdom. You don't get pulled back into old patterns because you miss the past. You get pulled back because part of you still doubts your power. But that doubt has no place here anymore. Not in this version of you. The version that walks away without apology. The version that enforces boundaries without guilt. The version that does not seek peace through submission, but through self-mastery. You were not made to suffer for your sensitivity. You were made to rise because of it. When sharpened, your empathy becomes intuition. When focused, your silence becomes strategy. When protected, your heart becomes a weapon. You are not soft anymore. You are sharp. And from this point forward, the only thing they'll feel is the absence of access. Not out of hate, but out of evolution. Because nothing and nobody can hurt what has finally learned to protect itself. The final stage of transformation is not becoming feared. It's becoming free. Free from the need to be understood. Free from the urge to explain your value. Free from the emotional cages built by people who only ever loved your weakness. Because now you've stripped away the illusions. The illusion that others will complete you. The illusion that closure will come from their apology. The illusion that someone else's loyalty defines your worth. You no longer wait for their validation. You validate yourself by how you move, how you think, how you rise every time they expect you to fall. You didn't go through all this pain just to return to who you were. You didn't suffer betrayal, disappointment, and silence to remain soft in the wrong places. You went through it to sharpen, to shed, to stand. Not with bitterness, but with clarity so sharp it cuts through every lie they told you about yourself. You are not too much. You were just surrounded by people who were never enough. You are not hard. You've just learned not to bleed for those who laughed while you broke. That lesson was earned. And now, it's the reason you will never be broken again. Power doesn't look like control over others. It looks like control over yourself. It's in the moments you say nothing when provoked. It's in the restraint that drives your silence. It's in the steady gaze that tells the world, I don't need you to like me. I need you to respect me. That is the shift that makes you untouchable. Because the world will always test your limits. It will send people to trigger your insecurities, distract your focus, and reopen wounds you thought had healed. But this time, you respond with discipline, not emotion. With distance, not desperation. When someone leaves, you don't chase. When they lie, you don't argue. When they disrespect, you don't explain. You simply exit the situation with the quiet power of someone who knows they've already won. Because if your presence doesn't inspire change, your absence will deliver the message. The most powerful moves you make will be the ones they never see coming. No warnings, no emotional outbursts. Just silence and self-elevation. This is your edge. This is your defense. This is the new law of your life. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. If it lowers your standards, it's beneath you. If it asks you to forget your worth, it no longer has a place. You don't bend to avoid breaking. You stand so firmly in who you are that breaking becomes impossible. They will wonder what happened to the version of you they could control. That version is gone, buried beneath every lesson, every scar, every silent decision that rebuilt your soul. And what stands in its place is not revenge, not hatred, but absolute, unshakable peace. Because now you know, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because they won't try, but because they no longer can.